Prime Minister is pledging today to crack down on rip-off university degrees, limiting the number of students who can be accepted onto courses which have got either a very low good job uptake years after the course or high dropout rates. So let's talk about this with Sian Griffiths, who's the Education and Families Editor at the Sunday Times. Good morning to you, Sian.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, I have to say, this seems to be warmly welcomed by an awful lot of people from many different sides of the political debate today. Certainly is something I welcome. I've been very worried for years that we've been selling a terrible, terrible con to a lot of young people who aren't particularly academic, doing subjects and studies which aren't going to get them a job, a piece of paper that costs them, 45 grand on average of debt that they're not going to be able to afford to pay back, taxpayer picking up the bill. It's been a bad deal for everyone, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'd say it has. I mean, there are these degrees that have been called university rip-off degrees, and it's been tragic watching students drop out of them at incredible rates and also just graduate and then not be able to get a job that will enable them to pay back their student loans because they're not earning enough and sometimes not able to get a graduate job at all. So it's great that this is happening, I think. And I think part of the government's agenda is to try and switch young people who might have gone on to these courses that really were pretty disastrous for them. Yeah. Switch those kids onto apprenticeships where they've got a better chance of a good future, earning alongside studying. Yeah. And that's kind of what Britain needs as well.
And there's been such an emphasis. This started with Tony Blair. He wanted 50% of young people to be in higher education or training. I mean, this idea, I've always thought it was insane on the university front. Given that 50% of young people can't make 5 grade C GCSEs or above, even with grade inflation, the idea that 50% of those pupils at 16 can't do that, but 2 years later, absolutely, they can all go and do degree courses. I'm not trying to diss anybody, but it's quite clearly patently absurd that is the case. There's lots of different ways that people learn. Some of the cleverest and most successful people I know left school at 16, didn't do A-levels, wouldn't have been able to do A-levels. Really, it wasn't the way their brains were. Very successful people you would hire a shot to do any job at all because they're just completely clued up. And we all know loads of people like that, but they've been told, no, you have to do a degree. But those degrees aren't necessarily getting them to the next stage. And they're just 3 years late in the world of work with a whack of debt to their name.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the problem is not that kids go to university. I think, a degree is still, if you get the right degree from the right university, still boosts your earnings potential. The problem is that we have too many degrees in too many universities that are essentially rip-off degrees. And I think teenagers going into them don't realise. So one of the things I think the government wants to do is make universities publish things like their dropout rates, things like what is the earnings potential from this course in a really clear way so that students know at the age of 18, OK, I'm going for this course at this university. Jesus, I've got like 3 in 10 chance of dropping out of it before I even finish.
And that's often the case about, no problem. You see, my view is when you see universities with adverts, if you have to advertise, that's usually a bad sign. And I know I'm being snotty here, and I know I am, but, often it's former polytechnics. They're not very good. They're offering a load of courses they think are popular, where they're getting a load of people, they are raking it in, everyone's being paid a fortune, but their degrees, say, not worth the piece of paper they're printed on, and their degrees that aren't going to get people a good job. And the dropout rate is very high because a lot of the students they're letting on have got, D's and E's at A-level. They're not academic, they're not able to keep up with the work. It's the wrong choice for them. It's terrible exploitation, and at the end of the day, it's not just the students being ripped off, it is the taxpayer. A lot of people have likened the student loan system to a Ponzi scheme, and it's not far off it, is it?
No, it's not. The really sad thing is when you talk to these young people, maybe they've done 1 or 2 years at university, they come out, they've taken out a student loan, they're still 20 or 30,000 pounds in debt. Yeah. They've got nothing to show for it. Yeah. And those cases are individual tragedies. And those young people often feel incredible shame and failure. And it takes them, a few years sometimes to pick themselves up. But yes, you're right. Will they ever repay that money that they borrowed for this course that they never finished to the taxpayer? And many of them don't. Half of our students don't go on to repay their student loans in full. And so we have this huge black hole in the public sector finances. It has been called a Ponzi scheme. That's exactly what it's been called. And the government, talks a lot about balancing the books and making sure that our public sector finances are robust. Well, the student loan scheme is a really good place to take a hard look and try and reform it.
Absolutely. Really good to talk to you. Sian Griffiths, Education and Families Editor at the Sunday Times. Thank you for that.